Chapter 6. Assault. The rush didn't end, even when traffic slowed Veronica's skip across town towards Navarro's spot. 2 zero-point guards drove. Veronica kept her earphones in, music playing loud enough to make clear she wasn't interested in small talk. The pair were pros. They knew the job, which let Veronica focus on the small brooch in her left pocket. Stripped off Eve in the SUV shortly after her capture, handed over to Veronica, and now here, right here. Her father had found the same thing before he disappeared. A gateway to solving the world's problems and etching his name in human history. Veronica didn't give a damn about any of that. Not at the top of the list, anyway. Glory and fame could come after she helped remove the alien thing that made the badge. That Navarro was willing to put aside any differences in pursuit of that common goal, of laying claim to victory before any government could do the same, was even better. See, Veronica had talked with that agent, Ezra, had seen the ferocity in the man's eyes. He had a vision that he'd pursue to the devastating end. No manipulation, no deal-making there. At least the local cops didn't know what a badge looked like, had taken a ring ripped off a zero-point employee as a decoy. Navarro was a businessman. He'd understand what Veronica wanted. And he had Lode in his possession. Without Eve, Veronica would need the cowboy to get her into the grove. Veronica, after walking past Navarro's security, despite Ellsworth's vote of gangster confidence, she didn't carry a weapon. And ditching her guards, found Navarro and Lode sharing a late lunch amid shipping containers. Cargo work continued around them, the noise forcing them to occasionally shout over clanks and grinds, clatters and bangs. "Show me," Lode said on her approach. The man's suit bore rumples, but the hat was still there, his grimace as angry as ever. The badge. Veronica fished it from her pocket, kept it in her palm as she gave the cowboy a glance. "It's what we need?" Navarro asked, dabbing off the oils from his deli sandwich. "That little thing, is it?" "We hold hands. It'll get us inside. You want to drag an army in there, we'll need more." Lode didn't reach for the badge, but kept staring at it in Veronica's hand. "Can't pop back anywhere either. Our boys need to get to the right spot, then we shuttle them in a few at a time." "A few at a time? That sounds too easy to prevent." "Not if we play it smart." Lode leaned on his elbows. "We cross over, we'll be in a nice room tagged to that badge. Everyone waits their room while we blitz people in. Then, once we're good and ready, we break out. A little patience, we get our raiding party." "Then we take the grove?" Veronica asked. "Find my dad?" "If your dad's still alive, he'll be there." The Pline girl had the badge. Ezra made the obvious leap after a close inspection confirmed the silver ring, and its little garnet had 0 alien properties. He'd toss it onto the FBI's local lab anyway. But the inscription on the band with a date and a lover's name suggested origins all too human. While his oblivious support deserved a solid scolding, Ezra delivered a scalding sigh instead, and sent them on their way. The day was winding down, and Ezra needed to leave the too clean, too quality confines of 0 Point's hideaway. A career trajectory bending towards ever more shadowy assignments, ones tucked further into the government's creases and away from prying eyes, had Ezra averse to supervision. But Eve and what she represented had his phone buzzing with interested idiots. No, he shouldn't consider the elected officials of his country that way, but Ezra couldn't help himself. Couldn't help finishing a cigarette, mulling the misfortune that led Eve to fall into Veronica Pline's lap, that led her to contact a corrupt senator. It had been Ezra's job to pin down the mysterious pair, and now... "She's ready," came the mellow tones of his second, his partner. Mayra's flat stare followed Ezra's hand as he flicked away the cigarette. Judgment always lingered, but never openly. a tacit agreement between them, mentor and mentee, to let vices lie. Like Ezra, those vices stopped at the job's border, and Mayra wore a slate-gray suit with flats, the blazer disguising the shoulder holster and its weapon along her left side. As he did far too often now, Ezra whisked himself back several decades to her age. He'd been assigned this case way back then, expecting to solve it quick, climb the ladder, maybe run the agency. He'd told Mayra to flee. Dip out after a year's time hunting these elusive souls, but she'd stayed, descended into the pit with him. Now they might both get out, if Eve decided to cooperate. The woman, tired and drinking from a plastic cup filled with tap water, sat in the 0 Point lobby. 2 Oakland officers watched her, the same pair that had flubbed the search. A curious receptionist eyed them between taking calls, 0 Point clients presumably arranging their details. "You two can go," Ezra said. "She's coming with us." "Going to need more than that," replied one. "Chief's going to ask what we were doing all day, and you'll find a reason." Ezra moved before Eve, who looked up at him. No fear anymore. The slight squint suggested curiosity, an attempted reading of motives. "You, meanwhile, get to go for another ride." "No more threats?" "I'm deciding you're not the dangerous one." Not right now. Ezra took a step back, gave Eve room to stand. She did. "Our car is a 3-minute walk away. You have that long to tell me everything, or I'm making a very unpleasant call." 3 minutes isn't a long time. "It's what you have. Use it." Ditching his daughter in an alien base probably broke some parenting rule, but Fade figured his balance on that score went so negative that a little more didn't matter. He let the guilt slip away to its festering niche and took in Oakland's afternoon. Thalia coughed beside him. "Welcome back to Earth," Fade said. "Air pollution sucks." They'd taken the trip, set the portal to an access point downtown, a fair distance away from Eve's last location, but Fade wasn't about to go bursting into a 0 Point shop with nothing more than his left and right hook. Thalia agreed, and pitched an alternative, one waiting in the back room of a corner deli. Thalia's cough faded by the time the air swapped from exhaust to olive oil and salami, a combo that had Fade eyeing the menu before giving up on his sandwich dreams. Another thing he'd forsaken for the job. Past sauces, cheeses, and wines Fade promised himself he'd try someday. They found a pleasant door marked for employees only, locked with a keypad. Thalia tapped the code, pulled it open on the chirp, and the two found themselves undergoing curious scrutiny from a few folks on dinner breaks. "I'm with her," Fade said first, nodding towards Thalia. She gave her uncle's name, asked for the special packages. 2 of the trio returned blank stares. The third pulled a phone from a splattered apron pocket, tapped a number, and returned a verdict several seconds later. Through it all, Thalia kept Fade out of the back room, observing some code to keep the peace. All the games in this world. Being a Raker was so much simpler. Go in blazing, rescue or ruin the target, and warp away back to the Grove. "You're clear," the man said. "Check behind the mozzarella." The big white cheese bricks, nestled on metal grates, served as succulent barriers to several hard cases behind. The breakroom buddies didn't raise a hand to help, as Fade and Thalia shifted the mozzarella aside, save to warn the pair that they'd better replace every damn one. "I run a tight shop," said the man who'd placed the call. "You messing it up isn't in the deal." "Calm your caprice," Fade sniped back, earning a deserved Thalia eye roll. The cases, once acquired, showed Thalia's uncle belonged in bad gangster movies. Stuffed with weapons, cash, and ammo, the mini arsenal prompted a few questions. Like, why hide all this in the back room of a deli? "Because my uncle likes to get his lunch here," Thalia replied, sliding on holsters and dropping guns inside them. "Any ambush comes by, he's ready." Who's going to ambush your uncle? Thalia shrugged. He's paranoid. You going to grab any of these? You know how I feel about guns. Guarantee 0 Point isn't going to go easy on you because you want to bare-knuckle brawl. Guess you'll have to cover me then. Fade did, though, take a thick and well-honed combat knife. With the deli's apparent manager still watching, the Raker turned to the top mozzarella brick, swept the blade across. Plastic wrap parted, and he picked up the hefty piece, ate it in a single bite. Gross, Fade, Thalia said while the manager scowled. Delicious, actually. Fade pointed the knife towards the door. Let's go. Sussex, the strange alien Raker who'd been so kind to Jaycee on her first stumbling wander into the grove, had mentioned the creamy infinite wasn't so bland to everyone else. Depending on your visual spectrum, the grove might be a chromatic wonder. Jaycee might be in paradise and not know it, surrounded by what looked like a blanket of cream cheese. The audience, at least, ensured Jaycee wouldn't go hungry, though its offerings had her wishing for some condiments. Spice and flavor faltered, advanced technology paling against her neighborhood taco joint. The one Thalia hit up every time she ambushed Jaycee on random evenings. Where are they now? Jaycee asked the silky sapphire table before her, and the audience complied, rippling to show downtown Oakland. Or downtown Oakland as sculpted by deep blue slime. Her father and Thalia were moving, their location tracked through the badge her father held. An opal fastened on a slim ring hugging his ring finger, a platinum band all but enveloped the stone, and Jaycee thought it looked like an evil, peering eye. Fade said he hadn't thought much about it, despite the fact that he'd be wearing the jewelry more or less forever. Then again, that was very much like Fade. And Veronica Pline? Jaycee asked the table. If Fade and Thalia had their mission, so did Jaycee, and for once it wasn't homework. The audience wasn't so confident there. Oakland splashed back to nothing, and the surface shivered. Future tech had its limits, but a little clever application could get around them. Let's try something different. Show me all the badges on Earth. The table shivered again. Dim memories of Jell-O dessert crafting in a happy, long-gone childhood peaked, and bubbled up several spots. The first, to the left, offered Fade's downtown Oakland view. Her dad was making his way north towards the shipyards. The middle zoomed in on those same shipyards, a warehouse surrounded by containers and loading equipment. The right side offered the Lost Badge, nestled in some deep Asian jungle swamp. Nobody's getting that one, Jaycee muttered, turning her focus on the shipyards. The audience wasn't a security camera. It didn't provide a live feed. It did, though, connect through to Earth's internet, and all the information that came with it. As to how that all worked, Fade said it was safer to assume the gardener had long since overcome any technical issues humanity could imagine, and go from there. In short, don't think about it. A mantra Jaycee was, with everything else going on, happy to adopt. Instead, Jaycee flew through the audience's blue-tinted web pages, splayed out across the table with links ready for the tapping like the young, tech-savvy woman she was. The shipyard's owning company gave way to further layers, all leading back to a bland holding corporation with, there it was, ownership by one Alec Navarro. What Veronica Pline and Navarro, apparent enemies, would be doing mashed up together sparked questions. Jaycee asked the audience to tap into local news feeds, hoping a gunfight might be underway. A war between 0 Point and Navarro's group spilling into the streets, causing the chaos Thalia and Fade could use to rescue Eve. Silence. A few comments about a new Thai food truck in the area, which left unpleasant explanations. Either everyone had decided to kill each other quietly, or Navarro and Pline weren't quite the foes Fade had suggested. So what were Thalia and her father heading towards? That question had no easy answers, and neither did the next, prompted by the badge's sudden disappearance. The shipyard sank into the blue table, the link vanishing. When Jaycee asked it to come back, the table only shivered. When she asked it to show the badges again, only 2 fades zooming along the highway and the swamp victim showed. Jaycee flicked a look up from the table, across a grove swarming with oddball species across all spectrum of wonder and nightmare, to the tower rising into the endless milky void, and swore. The first time Veronica had tripped into the grove with Lode, she'd been stunned, overwhelmed, a young girl more concerned with college than the tilt of civilization. This time, when the shipyard's dismal twilight faded into whitewashed stone, Veronica didn't let the shock faze her. She matched Lode's deep breath, reveled in air too pure to be believed, and let her look slip towards Navarro. Something to relish there. Alec Navarro had been the cool gangster on the fringes of Veronica's knowledge, a specter amid Oakland's crime and corruption. Veronica had picked up on him in bits and pieces from her father's commentary. Christopher Pline was fond of long dinner speeches declaiming this or that plague upon society, and Navarro numbered among the worst. That Navarro used a legitimate security business as cover only irked her father more. Her dad would have been happy to see Navarro's wide eyes, his stumbling gait as Navarro took the new world in with tentative appreciation. They'd gone through as a lone trio. They could gather up more badges, enough to bring in several dozen soldiers, and with a little surprise and a little luck, turn the grove into the newest Pline and Navarro property. Veronica frowned as Lode sauntered to the room's sole exit. Details would have to be worked out. Until then, equal numbers of loyalists to each side would get to go in. That had been the hashed agreement made in the shipyard, but Veronica had seen the movies. What if Navarro had paid her people under the table, ready to flip sides as soon as they grabbed the grove? "Wonderful, isn't it?" Lode said, turning back and giving Navarro a wicked grin. "Right now your body's getting a lift. Brought back to the healthiest it's ever been." "How?" Navarro replied, his head shaking as he spoke. The man didn't get a second word out, as Lode took 2 quick strides across the room and belted Navarro in the stomach. The gangster bent over, and Lode followed up with an elbow drop to the man's head, planting Navarro on the hard ground. A sharp kick followed, ensuring Navarro had left consciousness behind. Lode, always cautious, squatted down to check, confirmed with a spit to the side. Veronica gulped, gauged the distance to the door, figured she couldn't outrun the cowboy even if she wanted to. "Hard to kill a man here," Lode said, standing. "I'd need to snap his neck, keep it broken for a few minutes. Not feeling that right now." He looked at Veronica, a devil's grin. "Figure you and I had a deal, one I've kept. You're here. I'm going to walk out that door and you're going to give yourself a good long count before you follow." As he spoke, Lode reached inside his jacket, the same 0.1 he'd worn that morning, and drew his pistol, returned before the trip to the grove. "Don't be cheating, or we'll see whether a bullet to the head does the job." "I don't understand. I thought you wanted the grove taken like we did?" "Thinking I give one damn about the world is a mistake, Pline. When you become a Raker, you lose everything else. The gardener took that away from me, too. Means I have nothing left." Lode chuckled, reached the door. "Except revenge, anyway. Killed a lot of things. Figure it's time to see if a god dies as easy." As the door swung shut, Veronica knelt by Navarro. The man did breathe, seemed very much unconscious. She worked his pockets, pants, and sleeves, came away with a snub-nosed gun, 2 knives, and a wallet stuffed with Navarro's details. Thus equipped, she stood, faced the door. She could wait, let Navarro come back and head out as a pair, a man she'd been fighting against only a few hours ago. Number. Instead, Veronica would do what she came here to do, Find her father, dead or alive. Their ride, a cabbie that well understood not asking any questions, dropped Fade and Thalia a block off the highway and several lit stretches away from their destination. The warehouses loomed in the breezy evening, cranes catching moonlight overhead like some massive alien claws. Might be a sign Fade was seeing too many weird creatures in the grove. "Ready," Thalia said as she finished checking her weapons for the third time since they'd embarked north. Nerves. Unsurprising, as this sort of rapid strike wasn't their usual. Fade would have preferred a chance to do some digging, find a map of the warehouse where Eve's badge had been noted. Alternate entries, escapes, and potential spots for ambushes could have been drawn up. Instead, they'd be going in blind. Fade ran a finger over his ring, the opal badge inset. They still had this, an escape back to the grove at the cost of a little time. Better than the old way, a dash out to the street and hoping Fade hadn't lost his car keys in the fistfight. "Stick close," Fade said as they walked, a casual approach on the sidewalk opposite their target. "Things get rough. We'll need to hold hands to jump." "Hold hands?" "Don't get sweet on me now, Fade." The shipyard wasn't quiet, despite the evening hour. Container work continued, the brash clangs and thrums rolling out over the concrete. Trash escaping its confines drifted around, catching in the embankment leading up to the highway. Trucks rumbled past. Both Fade and Thalia lapsed into a concentrated quiet amid the clatter. That focus found fresh targets as they passed the target yard. A fenced entry claimed no admittance to just anyone, though the gate was open. A small gatehouse with a lowered bar sat occupied, the man inside scrolling on his phone. Beyond, lights caught people working in clusters, hefting cases and donning body armor. "What are they doing?" Thalia said as they continued to walk. A casing pass, then they'd turn around and make a move. "Those aren't dock workers." "Getting ready for a fight." "Maybe Veronica wants to move right away." "Just her dad. Worked out great for him." They reached the next block's end, crossed over. Barbed wire topped the fences, making any clamor over a bad idea. The truly desperate could try a swim through the bay, crawling up soaked in grimy water. Thalia's guns would be ruined, but they might achieve a disgusting surprise. "No way," Thalia said, when Fade offered up the watery invasion. "You get me a wetsuit and we'll talk, but this girl's not getting in that water." "Then what are you thinking?" Behind them, another truck rolled up to a rumbling stop at the intersection. Thalia turned on her heel, went up to the semi's cab, and tapped on the door. The driver inside peered out at her, made no move to open it until Thalia drew her gun. Fade saw the guy's eyes lock on the weapon, watched him calculate whether he had the guts to slam on the gas pedal and try to outrun the hijacking. Saw him realize dying for his job was very much not worth it. The door unlocked. Thalia pulled it open, waved the man out, said he ought to call the police. The driver stammered nonsense in reply as Thalia took his seat. Fade followed, jumped up beside her. The driver, his phone out, made the run to the road's far side as Thalia dropped the truck into gear and turned towards their target. "Choosing the subtle route, I see," Fade said. "We need to rescue Eve and get the badge, right?" "We're outnumbered? That means chaos, Fade. You know that. Now buckle up." Fade did just that, swiping the seatbelt across his chest. He clicked it home as Thalia began a hard turn right, the truck's tires squealing as they tried to keep the towed load level. The guy in the gatehouse caught the headlights, looked up from his phone just in time to throw himself out of the way. Thalia, hands gripping the wheel, hunched as the semi bashed through the gate bar, busted its left end on the gatehouse, and kept rolling forward. "In that warehouse?" Thalia yelled. Two monster frames loomed before them, shipping containers stacked on the sides. The goons getting armed scrambled, grabbing at guns, body armor, and each other as Thalia's rig bore down. "Gotta start somewhere," Fade replied. The truck's loose turning radius and Thalia's speed made the warehouse charge an easy choice. The semi rolled over cement, bashed through the warehouse's flimsy siding, and careened into rows upon rows of pallets. Glass showered Fade, the truck's engine keeping up the momentum longer than he expected. Metal, wood, and unknown debris coated the cab like an industrial net. "Go," Thalia said as the momentum ended, the smell of leaking gasoline and sparked fires spreading. Fade noticed blood leaking from a cut along her forehead, felt similar slices along his own limbs where shards had snuck in. He popped the belt, brushed the glass free, and tried to shove open his door. It met stiff resistance, more than Fade could force. "The windshield! Over the engine!" Thalia snapped, already climbing over the glass wreck and through the tangled debris. "Next time I pick the way in." "You wanted water." "This is better. So long as that gas doesn't go up." Veronica's 0-point goons weren't far away either, their organizing shouts making clear a cautious advance would be underway in moments. By then, Fade and Thalia needed to be gone, needed to find Eve and disappear. The thought struck Fade like bad coffee. "We could have killed her," he said, tugging himself around the jagged yellow ends of a large rack. "What if Eve was just inside?" "Not a chance," Thalia replied, "unless Veronica wanted to keep her on a shelf." "The offices are on the far side." "You know this how?" "Oscar runs security on some shipments." Thalia dropped from the truck's extended, smoldering engine to the ground, brushed off her jacket as Fade fell in alongside her. Around them, dangling floodlights illuminated a crowded warehouse, crates upon crates of various goods, most labeled as imports from various South American countries. "Not exactly what I'd expect from Pline," Fade said, as Thalia broke towards the warehouse's rear. "Lots of tech getting sent up from down there?" "No idea. Thought it was weird for Pline to have a warehouse anyway. Deals in software, right?" "You're asking the wrong guy." The offices were indeed at the warehouse back, a narrow set closed off from the rest of the building. They were dark, shuttered, and when Thalia pulled open the single door, empty. Fade's curse covered them both. "Dig for the badge?" Thalia asked. "No time." "We stop. They'll surround us." "Which means, other warehouse, now." Fade's words caught a different punctuation. A bullet. The shot streaked in, slammed off the metal office housing to Fade's left. Sparks prompted a dive. Fade leaped to his right while Thalia ducked into the office, shutting the door behind her. Fade hit the hard concrete and rolled, getting behind a sedate forklift as more rounds speckled off the ground where he'd been. Thalia returned fire quick, drawing shouts from their attackers, a brief stop to the shooting while they found cover. A quick glance around gave Fade little to work with. He could slink to his left, try to vanish amongst the racks and surprise the security forces. But the warehouse was well lit. They'd be looking for him, and while Fade's confidence in his martial skills was, perhaps, too high, he didn't like his chances against this much firepower. Running was the better play. But where? As if Thalia heard his thoughts, the big bayside garage door at Fade's back rumbled to life. Clattering up, revealing lit, lapping water and long docks behind him, the doorway gave Fade options. He took them, keeping the forklift in between himself and the attackers, while dashing right, towards the other warehouse. He'd get Eve, break back this way, and Thalia could dash free. Even if she took a bullet, so long as Thalia reached Fade, he could pull them back to the grove and it'd all be fine, all be... The second warehouse was just as dark, just as empty. Fade reached the entry, a door beside the closed garage, and pulled it open to see nothing. Papers, a couple of computers, and framed photos of families Fade couldn't care less about. No signs of interrogation, fighting, frustration, or the badge. Too late. They must have moved Eve, which meant there wasn't another choice but to ditch out of there. Back to the Grove, reset, and go again. Fade heard the steps, spun, and saw the guy rounding the warehouse corner. The man had a handgun raised, flashlight atop its short barrel, ready to fire, and the man did. A hit if Fade hadn't retreated into the office. He reached back, grabbed a keyboard off a desk, and as the man wheeled into the doorway, Fade launched. The gun fired again, too fast to hit Fade as he plastered himself against the wall. The bullet whizzed by, and the keyboard struck home, bashing into the man's weapon and knocking it to the ground. Fade sprang after like a pouncing tiger, knocking away the flimsy defense with his hands and finishing with a kick to the enemy's knee. One satisfying pop and resulting scream later, and the guy was down. Fade was about to deliver a knockout kick when he noticed the man's gear, a jacket that didn't say 0 point. A hat, now on the ground, that marked the man as a Navarro employee. Like a good Tetris game, the blocks fell into place, and Fade found himself in a blind sprint back towards Thalia, towards gunfire. The game had changed, and the Grove was in trouble. Chapter 7. Dark Places. Home itched. An embarrassing trespass crawled his skin and kept Lode's hands on the pistol as he looked across the ringed level. A view he'd beheld 100, 1,000 times over years upon years. The first had been a confused wonder, then a long, relaxing interval, and now an exhilarating dread. Going back wasn't an option anymore. Killing Fade, restoring himself to a Raker's gilded status? Number. The gardener had abandoned Lode, and so Lode would end it. The question, one Lode had been putting off in favor of his return's more immediate objective, was how. The gardener only came through in the Grove's vast courtyard, deigning to speak to the eternal slaves it had co-opted to deliver its singular vision. Where the gardener went when it left its shifting from behind, nobody knew. What the Grove even was beyond the stones and the audience tables, their infinite resources, was a mystery. If any of the other Rakers had figured it out, they'd never shared it with Lode, which left him with a puzzle to solve. The ring where he stood offered few clues. Every room tied to a different world the gardener had bothered with. The doors came in different sizes, shapes, and materials as befitting their Rakers. Lode figured he could dismiss them all as one-way boxes. The gardener wouldn't be found in any, nor would the Grove's beating heart, if it had one. A skittering cheer had Lode crouching behind the stone railing, catching a glimpse of a lace-like spider plummeting from above. That Lode didn't recognize the Raker came as a comfort. If he couldn't tell an intruder from a regular, then maybe he didn't have to hide. Regardless, sitting here much longer would risk Veronica or Alec coming out to find him, and Lode could skip that pointless crap. Patting his pistol, tugging on his wide-brimmed hat, Lode hefted himself over the rail and fell. The levels raced by, his stomach zipped up into his throat, and the blue-white circle at the tower's base grew until Lode came to a floating halt. As ever, the speed to stop distance through his brain had Lode feeling like he ought to be mush. Instead, the circle shoved him off to the side, letting Lode's shoes catch a gentle touchdown. The lace spider was already gone. A glance up confirmed no further plummets heading his way. A chance then to look around. Rakers had a single pathway to follow from here, a broad stone road through a massive arch, down wide and fat stairs to the courtyard. Lode hadn't ever thought about taking a different way, so when options offered themselves, he almost blushed. How had he not noticed the slim arches around the landing platform, ones leading into dark recesses? Lode moved towards the nearest, again resting his hand on the pistol. The narrow arch forced Lode to turn sideways, though its height more than doubled Lode's own. The grove's ever-present creamy white light penetrated the sculpted, clean alcove only a step or two before dying out, leaving Lode's advance to be continued in utter darkness. No, wait. Lode blinked. The platform behind his left side, where the alcove apparently extending to his right into the gloom. He'd thought it all dark, but shadows emerged. Blurred definitions and silhouettes. What should have been a thin band between the landing and the tower's outer walls seemed instead to extend. Lode couldn't make out an end, just a darkness going on and on. Not empty either. He took several more steps, turning this way and that, and found the pass a short one into a much larger space. Not a lively one. The air was dead, no smells clued Lode into the contents, but contents there were. Shadows outlined lumps strewn about in odd shapes, ovals molding into one another, box-like cubes with oblong appendages. As Lode's eyes adjusted, he found some stacked with purpose, others thrown seemingly at random and left to lie. Like the grove's courtyard, there didn't seem to be any walls, just clumps amid an infinite dark expanse. Beneath the clumps glowed small dawn-like patches, unnoticeable until Lode's eyes adjusted to the deep black. Were these, somehow, the inner workings of the grove? The circuits that powered its miracles? Lode approached the nearest one, a series of spheres resting on and inside scalloped, thin stone bases. Without much light, Lode couldn't make out colors, but he did note irregular streaks on the spheres, jagged lines mingling with swirling, thick strokes, like lightning popping from clouds. He reached out, touched one. Cool, inert. He knelt, pressed on the sphere. Hard, resisting. A closed shell, maybe, with something inside. But how to open it? Lode laughed to himself, stood. What did it matter, these things? Curiosity couldn't distract him now. The goal was the gardener. Destroy that thing, free all of the Rakers from its grasp. Then they could all explore this mess. They'd have all eternity, enjoying endless life here in the grove without its taskmaster. Is that what you think? Came the voice, the one Lode had longed to hear. It scoured the cowboy, those simple words. Taskmaster, dictator, monster. The gardener stood in its whirlwind guise behind Lode, an unfathomable creature that had, nonetheless, been as much a parental figure to Lode as anyone in his centuries-long life. It stood, somehow, someway, at his back now, eyeing the cowboy in its steely, amorphous gaze. You believe the grove will continue without my guidance? That the place I have built and maintained for longer than you can comprehend will outlast me? Lode settled himself, took the urge to fall to his knees and beg forgiveness, and buried it, took comfort in the pistol's grip, in the gardener's desaturated look, more imposing in the grove's full light. Here its owner appeared more like a flowing shadow, something Lode could brush away. Figure it's worth trying, because I'm getting real sick of the usual. Murder, mayhem, and those guns of yours? I doubt it. You were, of all my human Rakers, the most bloodthirsty. The gardener let the word hang before lunging into the next. And effective. The rule is two, but it is one I've bent before, should you be willing to return. They won't take me back. I won't give them a choice. Lode swept another look around the relics. Stacks of unknown. Questions the gardener would bury if Lode said yes. Shackles, but with a perfect prize. He'd come here with vengeance, but how often did plans change with new information, with unexpected offers? One condition. You're never kicking me out again. I do the job my way. You get your species. No complaints, no threats, nothing from Fade and Eve. If you do the job. Detroit. The bomb. Fade and Eve had failed. How many other times had they disappointed the gardener to bring the god back to Lode? The cowboy clicked his tongue, threw the gardener a wink that the alien wouldn't understand. You know I will. Your species depends upon it, Lode. The gardener raised a hand. Small lights swirled from nowhere, magic explained by the tiny machines buzzing about the grove's air. They arranged themselves into a grainy image, a familiar girl staring at a blue audience table. These intrusions are too frequent. Too much knowledge, too quickly, will throw humanity from its course. Other species will think I am growing lenient. They are wrong. Don't worry, boss. I'll shut that door real tight and lock it up. Thalia focused on her breathing. The air going in and out as gunfire rattled the small office around her. The warehouse walls echoed every shot, making it feel as though she was surrounded by an army rather than 5 or 10 half-baked security personnel. She had 3 guns herself, though the snub-nosed revolver in her boot would require recklessness on someone's part to be useful. The 2 handguns, one in her hand and the other tucked into the small of her back, could deliver precise punishment at a steady rate. In the movies, they could annihilate a squad of hapless enemies in seconds. Right here, right now, she'd be outgunned and splattered by withering fire. As it was, bullet casings bounced off her shoes, wild sprays either wasting ammo or more likely covering maneuvers. The office had an exit to her left, a closed door leading outside. Too obvious. Fade had dashed through the garage, off to Thalia's right and through a murderous open expanse. Not viable, either one. Instead, Thalia swapped the gun to her offhand, pulled out her phone, tapped out the address to her uncle with a rifle emoji. Easy to understand. Then, Thalia tossed her handgun to the right, let it skid along the cement and out the garage, gave it a breath. The gunfire lulled. I surrender, Thalia called out. We've made a mistake. The office door banged open, the sudden wind scattering papers on the desk over the casing-riddled floor. 2 of Navarro's goons came in, lights on their rifles blinding her. Damn right you made a mistake, came the hot greeting of the first man. You're going to tell us what you're doing here, why you picked this place, and how much you're worth. Because if it ain't much, there's some fish in the bay that are going to get a midnight snack. Fade skidded to the left, breaking off his heroic charge as Thalia's gun bounced through the garage. A signal, intentional or not, that the fight wasn't going their way. Fade slipped between 2 stacked containers, pressed his back to the warehouse wall, and listened. The shooting stopped, meaning they'd either blasted Thalia or were buying her surrender cell. Had to hope for the latter. Crouching, Fade quick-stepped to his right, towards the battered warehouse front and hijacked Semi's remnants. Conversation came over distant traffic, nighttime machine work, people making calls, trying to find orders. More than one complaint that Navarro wasn't answering his phone. An answer saying that wasn't a surprise, considering where the boss had gone. Always lovely when mysteries resolved themselves. Always awful when the answer was a nightmare. Veronica Pline had used the badge once, Navarro never. Would the 2 of them have gone alone? Lode's absence suggested otherwise, hinted that Jaycee might be in trouble, except the gardener didn't like visitors. Didn't like Lode either. If that dismal trio had decided to jump to the grove, odds were they were already interstellar dust. But if not, then Jaycee? Crunching boots nearby snapped Fade back to the present. Orders flying now, switching to a sweep and a cleanup. Find the other one, get the Semi out of here, avoid police attention if possible. Fade heard all this nestled in a damp, chilly slot between the warehouse and those stacked shipping containers. A nice place to listen, a terrible spot to get caught. Yet those boots suggested at least two cutting off his escape. Well, the obvious routes anyway. Fade straightened, bent his knees, and jumped, grabbed a handle near the container's top and braced his feet against it. Pushed off higher onto the second stacked container, snared a lower lip, his fingers cold against the metal. Scrambled his feet, his toes into the ridges while reaching with his freed left hand to brace himself against the warehouse wall. Precarious, nearing 3 meters off the ground with another couple to go. Fade gauged the distance, bent his ankles, and leapt again, pushing with his legs and swinging his left hand in a push off the warehouse for a flimsy, desperate grip on the second container's top. His feet scrabbled for purchase, squeaking against the siding, his fingernails gouged into the slim gap between the metal bands and the container itself, tearing until Fade lurched his left leg up and over the top. An ugly roll brought the rest of him over, settling Fade on his back, king of the container stack. Overhead, a plane's flashing lights streaked by, heading into San Francisco's airport. Those few stars bright enough to pierce the city lights twinkled beyond. At another time, in another world, Fade could have laid right there for hours. Below, Boots investigated Fade's scrabbling. "We know you're here somewhere," said a voice. "We've got your friend, and we're giving you 30 seconds. You show your face, your empty hands, and the lady's guts don't mess up our floor. Your call." "Another time, another world." This one demanded a little more action. The Grove, Jaycee had to admit, was boring. Once you grew used to the menagerie of impossible creatures wandering around, some speaking in languages so far afield from anything she'd heard on Earth, there simply wasn't much to do. The audience could produce food and drink on command, but couldn't surf the internet as well as her phone back home. No streaming movies or funny videos, no chats with her friends. Jaycee felt stuck in a classroom after she'd finished her test, waiting for the clock to run out. Beyond the aliens, the Grove's dull expanse gave little reprieve. The tower and its descending stair played host to new arrivals, while the big circular portal at the opposite end spun up every few minutes to let a Raker back to their home. Beyond that, nothing. No games, no curious conversation directed her way. Jaycee even thought about looking for a bathroom before realizing that need wasn't there. Apparently, the magic she breathed in took care of those annoying biological needs. She pitched Fade's location to the audience again, only for the table to reply with the same blocky blue shapes. He'd arrived at the shipyard and stayed there, more or less. For a while now, which threatened to play havoc with Jaycee's imagination. Was Fade dead? Captured? Or enjoying a post-success debrief with Eve? Jaycee blinked. Double-checked the table. Asked the audience to show Eve's badge again. The shipyard melted to a blank ocean slate before the audience displayed a message in fixed turquoise text. The badge was home. Snapping her head up, Jaycee looked towards the tower, hoping to see Eve striding her way with good news. Instead, she saw the opposite in just about every way. Lode, wide-brimmed hat again on his head, sauntered down the steps. A cocky grin on his face, one that sent predictable ice lacing Jaycee's veins. Swearing to herself, Jaycee ducked down below the table. Lode's confidence suggested the gardener wasn't interested in flaying him, so sitting there waiting to be found wasn't a good play. But where to hide on this endless flat plain? The tower offered itself as an option, but getting there would mean. Jaycee caught a shimmering mass of what seemed like glass rectangles connected by inky strands. The creature drifted towards Jaycee, having come from the tower, its path putting it between Jaycee and Lode. As the thing, its glassy pieces occasionally clacking against stone and table, floated past, Jaycee patted her feet right along with it. She kept close, trying to pace the creature, which thankfully showed no interest in its sudden companion. Up close, the glassy bits crawled with prismatic lines, all running to the edges to link up with the inky strands. The panes projected heat, too, enough for Jaycee to feel like her right side, closest to the creature, was started to burn. No eyes, mouth, or other organ presented itself amid the tangle, offering up a curious question Jaycee refused to ask. She'd tackle one horror at a time. They passed one row, then a second, before the creature shifted its drift to the left, right where Jaycee stood. As the hot glass turned her way, Jaycee threw herself to the ground. The creature, unperturbed, floated overhead. The glass panes touched Jaycee's back, hot enough for a wisp of burning fabric smoke to rise. Jaycee scrambled to her right, staying low and getting behind another Raker, this one somewhat resembling a three-legged rhinoceros, if its horn ended in a blooming yellow ball instead of a point. Each foot, too, concluded in a splayed 8-finger hand. The Zinwi rolled a large eye her way, mouth making a low rumble. The grove's little machines parsed the noise, told Jaycee the question. "Practicing," Jaycee said. "Big mission coming up." Her reply earned a narrowing of that same eye, but Jaycee kept moving. Earth's audience table was behind, and to her right now, 2 long rows away. She tried a peek around the Zinwi's legs, looking for Lode's booted feet, and didn't see them. The cowboy had been walking slow. Maybe he wasn't there yet. In which case, Jaycee could just camp here and— "Move," the Zinwi said, the grove giving its voice a bubbling tremor, its great nostrils flaring. "My space, not yours." "Yeah, of course," Jaycee slipped on, making the judgment that the rhino thing could squash her flat, a more painful way to go than Lode's likely execution by headshot. She stepped into the gap between the tables, no cover offered down the long lane to her right. Jaycee crossed, figuring if she could make another 2 tables over, she could turn and run right for the tower. "Walking like that a new fad for you kids?" Jaycee closed her eyes, bit her lip, and stood. "Because it looks about the stupidest thing I've ever seen," Lode continued. "Like a dying spider missing half its legs." The cowboy crouched, hands on his knees, and stared Jaycee dead in the face. "Where's your dad, Jaycee?" "Gone." Lode nodded, held out a hand. Jaycee didn't take it, standing up and giving Lode his glare right back. The Zinwi stomped past on her left, heading towards the silver portal, which was spinning up to create a door to somewhere. "Too bad," Lode said. "Was hoping I'd get a chance to plug you both at the same time. Make it a family affair." A heavy, mocking sigh. "But part of being a Raker is getting used to the ends, not the journey. One annoying brat down, and my life gets a little easier." The cowboy's hand moved towards the pistol on his belt. Fade, Thalia, and Eve weren't there. The gardener's divine hand wasn't getting in the way. Another second, and Jaycee would see herself shot dead, would see herself. "Veronica?" Jaycee asked, glancing over Lode's shoulder. The cowboy hesitated, turned, and Jaycee ran, a panic move, a sprint in a world without a place to hide. So Jaycee left that world, followed the slow Zinwi up the shallow ramp, and through the glimmering silver. Veronica tried 3 doors outside their own, making her way around the stone ring and wondering what creatures might exist behind the smaller, larger, and oddly shaped entries. Every door, though, didn't budge when she pushed on it, suggesting a one-way trip and leaving Veronica without many options save the one: throw herself over the edge. Navarro made that choice for her, the man wrenching open the human entrance with a distraught rage. Veronica saw him from across the level and made the jump, putting her hand on the ledge and swinging herself over in a maneuver her old gym teacher would have been proud to see. She plummeted, swallowing a shriek, and bounced off the gentle landing into the tower's base. The exit made itself obvious, a yawning bright arch where, at that moment, oozed an ochre plant-like ball. Not a friend Veronica wanted to make. Instead, she spotted dark alcoves scattered around the tower and broke towards one. Up above, she heard Navarro shout her name. Veronica almost laughed, a skittish fear breaking at Navarro's worse plight. The man would get himself discovered, obliterated, and perhaps drawn some attention from herself. Buy Veronica time, too. What was this place? Shadows crawled, deeper here and there, where odd clumps gave the impression of a reckless hoarder. Veronica's eyes adapted, drawing out details that made less sense than the shadows before. Box-like containers mingled with orbs and sprawling, brittle growths. On her right, as the dark stones curled in a ringing corridor, a rack of vials each as large as her forearm rested against the wall. There didn't seem to be an opposite wall, just a continued stone floor into the infinite. Veronica sidestepped to her left, putting the solid wall at her back, and sank down to the ground. Measured several minutes with her breathing, her hands hugging herself. When Navarro failed to appear, when another alien or worse didn't rise up to destroy her, Veronica let herself relax, took stock of herself, and found the grove had worked its magic well. She'd not slept much the night before, but the exhaustion and the lingering cold she'd been trying to quit were both gone. Veronica hadn't had dinner, but that urge dissipated too, as did her scratching throat's need for water. She shook her head at nothing, at the incredible difference this could have made back home. No wonder her father had been so obsessed with this place. No more needs, no more conflicts. That brought a frown. If the grove had this kind of power, then why hadn't the gardener brought it everywhere? School offered up an answer, one she'd joked about with her friends often enough about the mysterious, inexplicable things teenage boys did. Logic just didn't apply to some things. Better, then, to focus on what Veronica could do, could affect. She was here to find her father, and once she did, they could focus on the next step together, getting back home and bringing an army to take this place for humanity. Now that was a cause she could believe in, a cause she could whisper to herself as Veronica stood and walked into the dark. Chapter 8. Contingency. Eve didn't lie. She spilled the story in the car's back seat as Mayra drove, Ezra catching her slight nods confirming his own beliefs. The Raker didn't hold back, her telling filling the blanks in files Ezra knew better than his own life. The Rakers had been operating for centuries, steering humanity in ways both brutal and subtle. Not surprising. Their efforts had been noticed, had been cloaked behind groups like the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, and any other convenient scapegoats. A veil, Eve said. The Rakers were only too happy to use. It's easier to be a legend than a shadow, she'd said as Mayra turned onto the highway, heading north, where an interesting buzz had crossed the car's police scanners. A stolen truck, a subsequent crash and gunfire at a port warehouse. A random coincidence, save the timing, the description of the perpetrators. A man and a woman, both veering towards middle age. Eve said her friends would come after her, and there they were. A little off on the location, but the effort was right on schedule. If the responding local cops could keep the body count low, so much the better. The question I have, Ezra asked into the quiet, is what's going to happen when we start going into your grove? What you're saying, this alien likes secrecy, likes to play by its rules. We already know what it will do, Eve replied, staring straight ahead through the windshield. She'd not shown an ounce of panic this whole time, little frustration, as if she'd settled into fate. Ezra had seen that before, too. The shock that comes over someone when they realize just how screwed they are. The gardener's going to erase Earth. Or at least us. It's scared of a little competition? Mara asked. We're not competition. Not even close. Then what are we? We're playing its game, and now we're breaking the rules. Fade rolled right, plummeting off the container and landing on the Navarro gangster looking for Fade in the wrong corners. Fade's knees hit the man's shoulders, driving the dude to the ground with a wet smack. The strike rattled up Fade's frame as he fell off the body, scrambling for the man's gun. As Fade found the grip and pulled the weapon free from limp hands, a flashlight cut through the late evening glow. Fade crouched in its center, a cat caught. Guns raised, aimed, and hands slipping to triggers. Options flashed, and Fade took the only one that made any sense. The port blinked away, its wet and dark concrete replaced with white stone and the creamy, ethereal light of the Grove's tower. The ring warmed Fade's finger as he tossed the captured gun to the side, looked down at himself. A little sore, some scraped knuckles, but otherwise alive and well. A coward intact. Fade threw a curse to the room, ran through bubbling, frantic logic saying Thalia wouldn't get offed, not right away. Navarro or maybe Pline would have to give that order, and neither one had been at the docks. Eve and her badge hadn't been either, so if the group had made the jump here, then Fade could find them first and stop thinking and move. Yet Fade only managed one step before hesitating, catching marks off from the usual pristine stone. Bloody flecks, dirty smears, already starting to disappear as the Grove cleaned itself. Evidence of bodies, which fit the intruder theory. But blood? Had that fragile alliance already fallen apart? With Lode involved, perhaps not surprising. The laugh coming with that thought died before it began. The killer cowboy was back in the Grove, and so was Jaycee. She bounced. The spongy surface, an ochre yellow and chill to the touch, sank under Jaycee's weight and threw her up. She flailed, arms wheeling as thin air let Jaycee soar higher than the basketball hoops she'd once dreamed of dunking on. Jaycee's wild eyes took in a patchy landscape. Those spongy spots interspersed with turquoise mounds stretching beneath a burnt orange sky. As she started falling back, Jaycee found the Zinwi she'd followed here, saw it trundle off the sponge with measured strides and right into one of the mounds. The gumdrop shape folded around the massive creature, swallowing it whole and sucking it from sight. The mound puffed back out, seemingly unchanged. Any wondering about all that vanished as Jaycee hit the sponge surface again, her body sinking in. Instincts honed from occasional trips to local trampoline parks triggered, and Jaycee rolled as the sponge shoved her back, tumbling off. A cold wet blanketed her side, and Jaycee noticed, as she bounced along, that the sponge secreted a nectar-like substance every time she hit. As Jaycee's awkward roll brought her to the sponge's edge, her arms and legs were coated with the stuff. Annoying, but more important, more incredible, was that she hadn't died. She could breathe. Her body wasn't folding beneath high gravity or exposure to elements so different from Earth as to be instantly fatal. Science classes and numerous bad movies had taught Jaycee that visits to far-off planets or other dimensions tended to result in grisly death. Yet here she was. A little gross, sure, but otherwise alive. "Suck it, Lode," Jaycee muttered, her own voice hitting her ears like a reverb, as if Jaycee were standing in a racquetball court. Weird. But fun? Sort of. It had been a while since Jaycee had been amused by her own voice, but she stood and chattered to herself anyway. Thrills and chills ran out through her fingers and toes. Escape's giddiness mingling with the growing question of what, exactly, she was going to do here and now. Find that Zinwi was the obvious answer, then convince it, somehow, to bring Jaycee back to the Grove, where Lode would be waiting. "Okay, think different," Jaycee said, starting towards the mound. The ground beyond the sponge, thankfully, didn't bounce. The color of a ripe peach, and with a similar texture. Jaycee reached down and ran her hand along the rubbery, slightly fuzzy surface to confirm. The ground bore her steps without radical revisions. Irregular rocks lay clumped and clustered here and there, and caressed by a steady, warm breeze. Not so alien, then, as to be incomprehensible. Carbon, nitrogen, iron, thermodynamics, and other physical laws. The universe's building blocks were here. A familiar, comforting glove. Things weren't so different from home. And maybe that Zinwi Raker wasn't so different either. Jaycee would need its badge to come back home. Maybe she wouldn't need to steal it. Maybe Jaycee could make a friend, and maybe Lode would find himself pierced on that Zinwi's horn. A happy thought, one that buoyed Jaycee until she reached the giant mound. Extending what must have been at least 4 or 5 stories overhead and as big around as a house, the mound offered a mottled surface and no hints about how it worked. "Do I touch you?" Jaycee asked the shape, before reaching out and brushing it with her fingertips. Nothing. Hard and unyielding, like pressing against drywall. Jaycee frowned, thought back to the frenetic moments after her first bounce. The Zinwi had just walked forward, had been swallowed up by the mound. No fancy code words, dances, or devices, just a walk. Wincing, very aware of the sticky coating on her legs, chest, and arms, Jaycee strode right into the mound. Her arms hit first, and Jaycee froze. Tiny flagella shuddered from the mound as the sticky fluid touched, the tendrils as thin as her hair and wriggling. They latched onto Jaycee, writhing against the nectar. A subtle pull came with the feel, the mound itself softening as its shell parted in a trillion ways to let the flagella free. "So gross," Jaycee said, before taking a huge breath and pressing herself forward. The mound, eager, swallowed her whole. Thalia had, over the years, assembled a goon spectrum. This line, ranging from inept mouth-breathers meant for little more than imposing their ugly mugs upon the world to savvy strategists overseeing their underling armies, had no problem catching Navarro's players as they ushered her back near the ruined semi-truck and the battered warehouse. Befuddled expressions and flicking eyes traversed the bunch, almost universally clad in denim and loose athletic jackets. The attire alone classed this group as Navarro's second-tier outfit, considering the man's penchant for suits and sleek cars. "So what are you going to do now?" Thalia said into the muttering rumble, the headless hydra around her hunting for any direction at all. "Find your pal," said one, a balding, heavy-set East Coaster who clung to his drawn handgun like it was a life preserver. "Pump him full of lead." "Don't think Navarro would like that." "Boss isn't here," said another, a smoker's prize, who, indeed, was lighting up a fresh one at that moment. "He likes us taking initiative anyway," added the first one. "Keeps his plate clean." "I find that hard to believe," Thalia said. "That any of you could take initiative, I mean." "Keep talking," said the smoker, blowing a fresh puff in Thalia's face. "Might be we throw you in the bay and see how you swim." "Please do." Sure, she'd need to shower for a few days, but Thalia figured she'd backstroke her way to freedom just fine in those chilly waters. Bluff called, though, Navarro's gangsters returned to their glum glances, burning seconds until another huffing player bustled into the group. "He's gone," the scrawny guy said. "Fell right on Davy, then disappeared. Had him dead, but then he wasn't there no more." "Any more?" said the smoker. "Shut up." More shifting looks. "He left," Thalia said. "Same place your boss went to. I imagine they're having a nice chat right about now." "How can we trust you?" asked the balding one. "You're the enemy." "You don't have to. Keep searching. You won't find him. Meanwhile, we'll all get hungry, run out of cigarettes, and waste time." As if Thalia had pushed the knight off a cliff, the calculus changed around her. Thugs blinked their way free of a firefight and took in the rest of the disaster. A warehouse needing repairs, a truck needing excision, explanations for it all, paperwork, contractors, cleanup. However annoying, all of these were problems Navarro's nuts and bolts gang could solve, and they lurched into the motions with the gusto of goobers with clear direction. "You're coming with me," said the smoker, nudging Thalia along the wet asphalt towards the shipyard's entrance. "We'll spend some time together. Wait for the boss to come back and see how he wants to handle you." "You and me, together?" "I'm so excited." The smoker rasped a laugh. "At least you're not boring." "Hate babysitting idiots." "Must be a hard life for you, then." The bustle behind them escorted their short walk to the entrance, where the broken gatehouse and its attendant pole lay in ruins. Getting a second look, Thalia had to admire the truck's sheer power, something to consider in future jobs where a battering ram might be needed. As it was, she crunched over rubble and took note that the smoker seemed to be escorting Thalia alone. A bad move, especially as they neared the quiet street, deserted as the clock shifted into the early morning. Spying an opportunity in a broken gate chunk before her, Thalia let her right ankle lurch forward. The smoker coughed as Thalia seemed to fall, the smoker's own handgun not swinging to shooting position. Suspecting a trip and nothing more. Thalia caught the innocence from her left, reached out with that hand to grab the smoker's arm as if to stabilize herself. The smoker coughed again as Thalia found a grip, a cough that became a curse as Thalia's seemingly busted ankle found the leverage it had never lost. Thalia yanked the smoker down to the ground, a hard fall that must have knocked the wind from the gangster's poisoned lungs. Thalia reached down, tore the gun from the smoker's left hand, and froze as sirens, bright headlights, and shouting authority interrupted everything. Contingencies were boring, but they bought survival. Navarro layered in one plan atop another, each one ready to kick in at the appointed time should chance, like a rogue bullet, passing cop, or lying informant, require the adjustment. Sure, it meant Navarro spent more nights poring over those plans, rather than dropping cash at the clubs or delighting in the same drugs he trafficked, but he much preferred the sound sleep that came after. Navarro had no contingency for this. It wasn't a shock, the dead realization coming as Navarro picked himself up off the white stone floor and noted the absence of his two conspirators. The conversations with Veronica and Lode had come quick, and he'd made the conscious choice, always a conscious choice, to take the risk. To trust Lode's lust for vengeance and Veronica's urge to find her father. Those two strings were ones Navarro should have been able to pull, leashes to keep the pair in line until a more permanent door to the grove could be opened. Now here he was, pushing through the wood door into an unearthly tower. Navarro ran his hand along his jaw as he looked across the ring-like level, the waist-high wall dipping into an abyss. A bruise should have been forming already, a sore bone from where the cowboy had socked him. Instead, Navarro didn't even have a headache. A smile at that. Lode hadn't been lying. The grove really was a place of miracles. Now Navarro just needed to get back home, and in the process, blaze a trail that could be followed. The doorways around the level didn't help much. Their varied sizes, from too small for Navarro to fit through without a crouch to more than double a standard frame, suggested their purpose. Hadn't Lode stated the grove served as a nexus for all sorts of creatures from far beyond Earth? They would need doors like these then, and... A whipping sound spun Navarro back towards the tower's center, where a blur flashed by. Navarro stepped to the railing, looked over, and witnessed a bluish-gray mass cut its deadly fall to a gentle landing. Limbs emerged and set down, the creature loping in a roiling move off the tower's bottom floor. Alive and well, somehow. The exit, then? Navarro muttered to himself, relieved to find his voice worked well enough here. Sound, oxygen, all the bits required for life, as Navarro knew it seemed to be present. A checklist filled up to Navarro's satisfaction, concerns about supplies like gas masks, oxygen tanks, pressure suits falling away. An invasion into this alien world, if what Navarro felt now held true, would be easier than robbing a bank or hijacking a rival's shipment. His people could simply stream in, all but invincible, and gun down anything standing in their way. And should the grove's owner prove less persuadable by force, then Navarro could always strike a deal. Humans were like cockroaches, after all, and without Navarro's help, they would simply overrun this place. No, stop. Navarro shook his head, squinted his eyes at the landing platform below. Getting ahead of himself was a fault of his rivals, not him. First steps first, secure a path for his hired guns. Then Navarro could open negotiations from a position of strength. To that end, Navarro took another risk. He climbed over the railing and dropped. Navarro kept his feet down, figuring a hard landing might cost him a couple of broken legs, wounds that would heal in minutes? An hour? Neither. Because Navarro's stomach had barely rose up into his throat before he slowed down, as if caught by a cradling hand, and landed easy on the bottom. This time, the grin could not be suppressed. He held it until Navarro left the platform, spied the obvious exit, and the creature waiting there. The same monster that had drawn Navarro to the drop, its 8 or 9 limbs sprang from several fuzzy central masses, almost like an electron diagram from Navarro's dim memory of high school chemistry, save those limbs all ended in 3-pronged hands. As Navarro saw the creature, so did the thing see him. While Navarro couldn't spot any eyes, those center balls rotated independent of the limbs, as if the tendril-like appendages glided across fuzzy, dead blue surface. "Hello?" Navarro offered. The creature didn't reply, but the tower's silence broke with a whispering tremor. An undercurrent beneath Navarro's feet that had him glancing down, seeing nothing save more white stones. Yet the rumble had a direction, one that led right to the creature. Its limbs swayed at the vibration, then expanded, uncurling from their tangle into a sprawling, spider-like cage. The creature occupied the entire exit now. Then it lurched forward, putting those 3 balls over Navarro's head, the limbs surrounding him on all sides. Navarro twisted, caught a dark, formless shadow back beyond the landing pad. A vague fear found him, and Navarro started to talk, to do what he always did, reach for a contingency. The words, though, didn't leave his mouth, for one of those limbs covered it. The 3 thumbs pressed into Navarro's face and would have shoved him back, save another limb catching Navarro's neck from behind. A third swept Navarro off his feet, sending him to the floor. More blue thumbs, wrinkled and fuzzed, pressed on him from all sides, squeezing, bending, crushing. Of all the hours, coffee hit best in the chilly dark, around 1 a.m. At least, that's what Ezra told himself as he sipped his steaming brew, freshly delivered by a confused gig worker. Mara tipped him well enough for the man to ignore the flashing lights, the badges, and the goons in cuffs getting collected for, among other things, holding a host of illegal weapons on their persons. Their claims to work for Navarro didn't seem to strike much fear into the local cops, so Ezra had a little hope they wouldn't see the streets again too soon. Whether Eve and her apparent friend Thalia, both with their own coffees sitting butt on curb, would occupy a cell as well remained an open question. Far from the most pressing one. "The badges are gone," Ezra found himself repeating to both ladies, as Mayra stood off playing logistics with the cops. Eve and Thalia stared at their clutched coffees with vacant eyes. "Which means, if I'm understanding you, the only doors we can open are closed." Eve nodded. Thalia sighed. Which means we're stuck waiting for one of these three, or your pal Fade to come back. Another nod. Another sigh. Ezra squatted before the pair, looping his tie over his shoulder to keep it from dropping into the wet roadside. For a being of incredible intelligence, this seems like a poor system. Small keys, easily lost, and no backup? The gardener is the backup, Eve answered. I haven't seen it here, but if a planet's Rakers falter, the gardener will step in and assign new ones, create new badges. What about rescue the old ones? I don't know. Rakers can die, losing the badges and staying alive. I don't know that it's ever happened. Not helpful. She's telling you what she knows, Thalia interjected, while Eve nursed her coffee. Sorry it's not going to fit in your perfect little lines and boxes. I don't need perfect. I need predictable. I need options, ideas, and potential plans. Ezra straightened, his phone already feeling heavy in his pocket. It's not just the three of us on the street here. On the East Coast, certain people will wake up soon. They'll need answers. If I can't give them any, they'll take a different path. And do what? Shake their fists at the sky? Thalia laughed. You can't just go to the Grove, Agent. What was your name? Call me Ezra. Ezra. It's like Atlantis or Elysium. All these places you've heard about in myth and legend. Doesn't matter how many guns you have, whether your tanks and jet fighters are ready to launch. They'll have nowhere to go and nothing to shoot. That's a problem for you. Me? Her too. Because they won't accept that answer, not without squeezing every last bit out of you. Ezra angled his coffee towards Eve. If you're not telling the truth, and I think you are, they'll find out. Even if they don't get anything new, you might not come out the other side. Thought torture wasn't in our playbook, Thalia asked. For someone selling drugs on the street or planning to rob a bank, no, but this goes beyond any convention, any international law. Your friend here has sparked a worldwide fear, has put a notice up saying there's a creature out there 1,000,000 times more powerful than anything Earth has in her pocket. If this were a comic book, I'd say it's time to call in the Avengers or Superman, but all we've got is a few special agents and some nukes. So help me. Help yourselves. Give me a way out, a way to keep this from getting worse. Eve set her coffee down, pressed her hands together, and shot Ezra a heavy-lidded look. You want my best guess? The gardener's going to find those three. It's going to find Lode and Navarro and Veronica. It's going to realize Earth's been broken, and it's going to do what it's done so many times before. The chill hit before Eve's words, hit worse because Ezra couldn't do a damn thing about it. The gardener doesn't tolerate mistakes. It won't risk humans going off its chosen path. It'll see us scrubbed clean first, obliterated. We failed, and now there's nothing left to do but hope it gives us another chance. But you don't see that happening. If you had infinite opportunities, would you risk letting one ruin it all? Chapter 9. Alien Issues. Lode had to give the girl credit. Hurling herself from the Grove to certain death on an alien world was certainly a choice. Not a smart one, but hey, Jaycee had delivered her own destiny. Plenty of people couldn't say the same. Neither would most of the creatures standing at Lode's back as the metal circle wound down, its gateway dissipating. Lode felt their stares, some through the same itch a watching eye delivered, and others through more physical means. Psychic intrusions, like bruising headaches, came from some while crawling chills, and a vague nausea rose from others. The universe's species often interacted with the human body in hostile ways, which Lode tended to blunt with his own gruff glare. He deployed it now, spinning around on his left foot and leveling his gritty visage at the makeshift audience. Rakers held to a certain unspoken code, a general mingling distance despite the Grove's language-looping mechanics. Divulging secrets that could lead one species off the gardener's intended track was simply too great a risk. Better to keep interactions to a minimum, betting instead on a mutual coming together in the far-off promised land. And yet Lode could tell he'd fallen to the bottom of popularity's ladder. It didn't take a sleuth to pin the reason on the viciousness that had been Lode's calling card over the many years. Rakers fashioned themselves heroes of a sort, and chasing a girl into an alien world didn't land on that spectrum. "One girl, or my planet," Lode announced to those still watching. A gaggle of plants, tentacles, floating blobs, and many-eyed bug creatures. "In my place, any of you damned Xenos would do the same thing." "Not me, you asshole," came a reply in fresh, human tones. The alien critters shifted aside to let the speaker through, a gift-wrapped present for Lode to tear apart. "Where'd you send my daughter?" Fade and Vance, once and future target, stood on the courtyard's white tile like a dingy rebel knight. A loose jacket, jeans, and sneakers blended with stubble and sloppy hair to complete the image of a half-assed James Dean. This was the man who'd all but tossed Lode over the side, who'd committed the cardinal sin of opening humanity's eyes to the Grove. "No idea," Lode answered, keeping his hands loose at his sides. The gun was there, but in the Grove, only a perfect kill shot would work. Best play it slow. She took the dive. Another Raker set the destination. "What are you saying? That she could be anywhere?" "Oh, she's definitely somewhere, probably wriggling as her oxygen runs out." Rough way to go. Lode popped a grin, started towards Fade. "Then again, I'm thinking your end's going to hurt a lot more." "Isn't it against the rules to fight a Raker?" Fade slid his right leg back as he asked the question, the man falling into a casual fighter's stance. A martial brawl. That's what this guy thought was about to happen? "You're not a Raker anymore, Fade. You're just a mistake, one I'm about to correct." Lode shifted his shoulder, looking like he was about to head for a haymaker, only to drop the feint and draw his pistol instead. Fade's eyes went wide. The bastard knew the couple meters between them wasn't near enough for a dodge. The cowboy raised the gun, finger already depressing the trigger, when the damn weapon flew away from his hand. The bluish, three-thumbed hand batting it away swept into Lode next, knocking the man to the ground. Pressing onto Lode's chest, the alien's hand swept the cowboy across the ground to bump shoulders with a similarly pinned Fade. 3 whiskery orbs floated overhead, those limbs spawning from each in a tangle. "Now then," spoke the creature, its voice a whispering wind that brushed back Lode's hair, almost made him sneeze. "The gardener just had me eat one of you, and I must say, it was rather gross. I am keen to prevent it from happening again." "Then let me kill him, and your problems will be solved," Lode said, the words hard to squeeze out from the pressure. "The man's inviting our species into the Grove. They'll be here like pests in a few hours." "Lode's lying," Fade answered. "He brought that guy here and he's giving them badges. He's the one that needs to go." "2 idiots from a species that seems to have many," the creature whispered. "We let the gardener decide." At that, Lode stopped his struggling, even as Fade continued protesting next to him. The cowboy reached up, put his hands under his head, and looked past the long limbs into the creamy infinite above. He knew this feeling well, the warm glow of inevitable victory. Fade's back told him the Grove's tiles weren't comfy. Hard, unyielding, they had Fade squeezing in short breaths beneath the alien's heavy thumb things. With those inhales, Fade tried to make headway, offering arguments aplenty for why the alien should back off and let him smash Lode into oblivion. The words fell on no ears, and when the alien said the gardener would be arbitrating this particular disagreement, Fade shut himself up. Summoning the domain's master was a little like rubbing a genie's lamp. Odd, but easy. With plenty of strange creatures watching, the alien pinning them both called out the gardener's name in its windy voice. The yell vanished into the infinite creamy void the grove called home, heard by everyone, including its target. Near the portal, a silvery mass coagulated from the ether, like a forming fog. A figure somewhat humanoid, in that it had 2 arms, 2 legs, and what seemed like a head emerged. The first time Fade had wondered if the gardener was some distant human fork, with all the possible implications that had for human society on Earth. Had they been planted by their hyper-advanced cousins as some sort of experiment? A rogue cast-off that had somehow lost its memory? That idea died as the gardener revealed it simply took the shape easiest for the situation, which usually meant adopting the guise of its audience. Fade watched the gardener drift nearer. Those legs didn't walk in the slightest, the creature moving more like a ghost made of liquid mercury than a man. At its wave, the alien removed its restraining thumbs, letting Fade catch a real breath. He stood after, matching Lode in a straight, on look at the gardener. Behind and beside the unfathomable thing, the portal swirled to life, spinning to a familiar destination, Earth and Fade's unremarkable driveway. You failed me. Again, the gardener spoke in choppy words, as though filtered through an old radio broadcast. Exactly who it addressed there, Fade wasn't sure. Both he and Lode kept quiet, as the gardener tilted its drifting self towards the portal. Humanity continues to be an irritant. Its people are frustrating, illogical, and high-tempered. They go where they shouldn't and make excuses when they're caught. They beg for... Sorry, Fade said. Trying to figure out who you're talking to here? Me or this asshole? Lode chuckled, the cowboy wearing a smile too big for the situation. Unless Lode knew something Fade didn't. Both of you. You have each had opportunities, as has Eve and your fellow Rakers. None have succeeded, and my patience has run out. Lode's grin slipped, those dark eyes shifting to a hard stare beneath the man's ridiculous brimmed hat. I don't discard intelligent civilizations lightly, but it is apparent yours is smart enough to be dangerous, but too stupid to exist among the best. It must be excised, deleted. Its planet given to better stewards. What? Fade took a step towards the floating gray gardener. That's it? A few little mistakes and suddenly billions get the axe? The decision is made. The gardener shifted its faceless visage, looking beyond Fade's shoulder. Prepare. The portal is set. Those last words struck Fade like a breeze and a blaze, a headache and a tremor. An order reaching all those species behind him, ones that talked through touch or temperature, brainwaves or wind. And what, exactly, the gardener told them to do was pretty clear. The bang wasn't part of the order, nor was Fade winding up, again, on the grove's hard stones, a spreading warm wet on his back. Pain, dulled but shock suffused nonetheless, radiated down Fade's sprawled arms, his straight legs, his blurred eyes. There, Lode announced, unseen behind Fade's heels. Shot him. Job's done. The girl's gone too, and our leggy pal here already took out the other. One left in here, and then the infection's all cleaned out. You just gave me another chance. No need to get all jumpy? That was before I knew of your companions. Before I knew you would attempt 2 murders here, in my grove. The gardener's reply washed over Fade as he tried to push back the ache. You have disturbed the grove for the last time. I haven't worked for eons beyond counting to allow this. We are striving to bring everlasting perfection, something you, it is clear, will never achieve. Better to remove you now than let you linger and infect any others with your idiocy. Lode's sigh was loud enough for Fade to hear. So was the second shot. Fade twitched, saw the gardener ripple where the bullet had crashed through. If it had done any damage, the gardener didn't show it. The erasure begins with him, the gardener said. Fuck you, Lode snarled. Fade heard the motion behind him, the scrabble as bodies acted. Lode's gun fired once, twice more. Above Fade, the gardener continued to float, unperturbed, maybe not paying attention. Fade could feel his feet. The bullet hadn't hit his legs, a chance then to take. Lode let fly another curse. Fade broke, scrambling ahead as best he could with his back hurting, the gunshot feeling like a heavy weight on his left shoulder. Old instincts, honed in the art of escape after years of picking the wrong fights, kicked in. Fade lurched past the gardener, stumbled towards the portal, the only way home. A last glance back showed what the Raker was leaving behind. Lode, pierced from a dozen angles by weapons, claws, and worse, fired off every round in his pistol and, with one last bloodied insult, fell quiet. Fade would have pitied a better man. Instead, he went home. Traversing through an alien mound called up a litany of approximate experiences. A massage done with a scrub brush, rolling through their dry grass yard, or standing in a shower when the hot water ran out. Needless to say, Jaycee's foremost opinion when she emerged was that these rhino creatures ought to upgrade their doorways. Because that's what the fuzzy mounds were, as evidenced by the sparkling tunnel where Jaycee found herself. Unlike the rather drab landscape above, reds and golds dazzled down below. The colors shone from glittering rocks, stones that didn't seem to be reflecting anything, but instead gave off the colors in warm, bright glows. Jaycee squinted as her feet found purchase on smoothed cave floor, her hands casting about for anchors and finding none, too wide for her arm span. Tall, with the ceiling rising more than a meter over Jaycee's head. A swirling draft suggested fans or some other means, with its circulation efforts meeting their end against the squishy mass behind her. A sniff registered spice, Anis's bitter scent, with campfire undertones. An odd mix, and one Jaycee might have been more interested in, save a growing itch in her lungs and an ache in her head. She threw a frown back at the mound, wondering if the abrasive entry had done more than reveal how thin her fast fashion clothes really were. The other alternatives, from standard dehydration to imminent demise on an alien world, seemed awfully dire. Regardless, she took stock of her singular option. Find the Raker she'd followed here and hitch a ride back to the Grove. Sure, returning to the scene of her would-be killer lacked some points, but Jaycee sure as hell wasn't prepared to spend the rest of her life cowering in these tunnels, cool though they might be. Zap back to the Grove, sneak up on Lode, and deliver a 1-2 punch-kick combo. Or, more likely, get the audience to warp her home before the cowboy caught on to her return. The plan buzzed through her squeezed brain as Jaycee took off down the tunnel at a walk that bumped up to a jog when the Zinwi Raker didn't appear right in front. The single passage threw a bump in her road not 10 seconds later, splitting into a trio. Jaycee's options, left, right, and center, differed only in the stones glowing within. Left had blue and gold, middle continued the red, and right shifted the spectrum to a searing orange. Jaycee tried to listen, heard a range of rumblings, scuffling, and deep reverbs that might have been the Zinwi talking. Those hums echoed, making it difficult to tell which tunnel spawned them, forcing Jaycee to choose based on vibes, on hope, on her favorite color. Blue. The guess paid off in the wrong way after another minute's fast walk. Running would have been fine in these tunnels, so wide and flat, but Jaycee couldn't seem to catch the breath for something so aggressive. The passageway didn't split this time, but opened up big, an ending ringed by blue stones revealing a massive chamber flowing off into a beautiful horizon. Shimmering rock lay about everywhere, with buildings sculpted from floor and ceiling entirely from the gemstones. Jaycee stared, marking doors and windows, pathways and fences, all crafted from different shining rock. Green clusters clumped around like potted plants, while orange and darker sapphires nestled together in patterned displays. Through it all, Zinwi lumbered, looking all too similar to humans on their way to work and back. With carts, backpacks, slipcases around their legs and arms, the Zinwi thundered here and there with calm purpose. Smaller ones followed larger, proving families here shared more similarities with Jaycee's own species. Music, or at least the rhythmic banging of stones with different tones, bounced along, providing a constant beat to the rumbling conversations. This was a city, a world, and Jaycee told herself she shouldn't be surprised. The gardener wanted civilizations that had potential, so why would Zinwis be some stick-and-stones cluster, barely hanging on in the throes of Bronze Age existence? Jaycee might have tried to place what she saw now into humanity's own techno-timeline, but her knees hitting the floor knocked that idea aside. She hadn't meant to fall, but now that she'd landed, Jaycee found herself unable to get up. Her legs had gone limp, and her arms prickled with impending numbness. Her vision, too, seemed to thin, dimming at the edges. "What?" Jaycee said, her throat scratchy and sore, as if breathing here was carving up her insides. Which, maybe it was. Damn it. If death was coming, then Jaycee's options would be shrinking real fast. No time to seek out the special Raker. Better to get anyone, anything, grasp at a chance. "Help!" Jaycee called, the sound still loud, helped by the cave and its echoing walls. "Please!" Her head hit the stones next, body unwilling to hold itself up any longer. She stretched out, tried to keep her mouth up, to draw another fiery breath and repeat the call. Inhale. Yell. Exhale. Simple steps, and she repeated them once, twice, and a third time. By the fourth, Jaycee had gone blind, heard nothing more than a senseless roar in her ears, and felt only the rush of panicking blood as it raced through her frantic heart. There was no fifth. The bullet stung as it squeezed out Fade's back, dropping beneath his jacket to clatter on the sidewalk while he leaned on a light pole. The sparse pre-dawn crowd didn't bother throwing glances, figuring anyone downtown at this hour looking like Fade warranted avoidance at all costs. A feeling Fade was thankful for, as getting his mind right wasn't going well. Just what had happened back in the Grove. Fade had walked down those pale steps ranked as one of a couple saviors of humanity, people ordained by the universe's most powerful being to keep the confused mess that was Earth in some sort of order. Within minutes, though, a bum cowboy had screwed it all, crossed the gardener so bad it had ordered. What? Earth nuked from orbit? Was that how this vast intellect did things? Fade's phone chirped, cell signal re-established, and an hour's worth of messages streaming in. Not that he'd get much over the middle of the night, but Thalia's name popped up a few times, mostly asking if Fade was getting this, and if he was, to call her right away. Standard hyperbolic stuff. And for a moment, Fade wondered whether Thalia really was the right person to talk to. Who did you call if the world was under threat? The U.S. President? The UN Secretary General? The FBI tip line? Thalia would serve well enough. Fade tapped the call button, looking down at the bloody bullet near his feet, and brought the phone to his ear, where it stayed long enough for Fade to catch Thalia saying his name. Then both Fade and the phone were flying. He didn't see where the device ended up, but Fade skidded a good distance on the sidewalk. His jacket served to blunt damage to his arms, his jeans to his legs. Fade's left cheek, though, earned a healthy scrape, fresh blood making warm trails as the Raker turned himself over to see just what car had jumped the curb to hit him. The make was purple blue, the model was alien monster, and it wasn't done. The creature, the same that had pinned Lode and Fade minutes earlier, stalked its octopus way towards him. Behind it, Fade noticed more unnatural shapes popping onto the sidewalk and street, An early scream and a honking car gave notice to the disaster, as did the spontaneous barking of a few nearby dogs. Doom's classic signals. "You want me?" Fade said, pushing himself up and settling into a dancing stance. "Come and get some." Bravado and B-tier action movie lingo usually worked wonders for Fade's self-esteem, and this moment was no different. A quick transition from the gardener's victim to flat-out fighting to save his home gave the old morale a boost, and Fade used it to sidestep the first three-thumbed swing. The limb shot by and punched the sidewalk near Fade's foot, gouging out a chunk deep enough to conjure grisly visions. Worse, the alien offered no response to Fade's verbal jab. Nothing less fun than a taunt that didn't land. Fade darted forward, kicking off his back foot and ducking beneath the stretched limb that had delivered the missed strike. A second hammer blow arced in from the right, soaring with enough height that Fade juked under that one too. Concrete chunks blew out, and Fade kept moving forward until the thing's spherical trio sat suspended before him like three very purple balloons. "Let's hope you're easy to pop," Fade said as he flicked his wrist, palmed the small knife waiting in his jacket to a useful grip. Fade's jab scored a deep cut on the central sphere, a deep line oozing an orange, tangy-smelling liquid. The sphere recoiled, sucking in like a deflating basketball, a thing Fade wondered at for a millisecond before the first arm he'd dodged returned and knocked the Raker off his feet. Fade landed on his back, bounced his left elbow, but kept his head from blending itself with the sidewalk. He swiveled his shoulder, threw the pocket knife, and skewered the right sphere. The creature shivered a second time, then simply disappeared. Behind it, looming as it barreled towards Fade, was a lime-green, boulder-looking thing with more stubby arms than Fade had remaining senses. As he backpedaled, pushing himself up to a shaky stand, Fade saw the plan, the whole game. With the badges, the Rakers could dip out and lick their wounds indefinitely. One by one, they'd storm the planet, an eternity of monsters that couldn't be killed. Well, not without a bullet to the head. Fade sighed as the fresh creature came within arm's reach. It always came back to the damn guns. Chapter 10. Second Chances. Amid a crackling police responder, the squealing tires as Ezra maneuvered along the highway streaking towards central Oakland, Eve recounted devastation. "I've only been part of a cleansing." The gardener's term. She kept her eyes out the window, dawn's cerulean haze lighting over the bay. "It wants to clean the slate, destroy the civilization, but leave the species alive. Humans will have another chance to rebuild, with new Rakers helping them along." "Them?" Thalia, sharing the back seat, interrupted. She had her phone out, was listening to the carnage coming through the speaker. "You mean us?" "We won't be a part of it. The gardener will make sure any real players are gone. My guess, the only ones left alive will be disconnected tribes. Very rural societies that won't really understand what's happened. So when you say rebuild," Mera added from the shotgun seat, "you mean a complete collapse. Billions dead. The gardener wants perfection. It will erase trillions if that means the right civilization emerges." "This gardener sounds insane. It is the most advanced creature in the universe." "That you know of," Ezra said. Eve shrugged. "Details," Ezra continued, pulling off towards an exit ramp behind several police cruisers. Sirens wailed, lights flashed. "What's a cleansing look like, and how do we stop it?" "At first it's scattered. The Rakers will come in here and there, assessing how we work and how best to break us. They'll appear next to our leaders, at our most valuable institutions, and destroy them." Eve kept her voice level as flashbacks, nightmares played behind her eyes, memories she'd done well enough to repress bubbling back. Presidents, chancellors, scientists, Our biggest factories and best weapons. There's no stopping a Raker. They'll find the spots, then simply appear. Kill or destroy, then vanish. Over and over again until there's nothing left. Thalia shook her head. That would take forever. Years, decades even. The Rakers will rotate through, but the pressure will be constant, endless. The one I was in, the panic and uncertainty did more damage in the end than we did. They destroyed themselves. We'd unite against... Eve gave a dire chuckle as the buildings grew around them, the traffic zipping the opposite direction in a snarl. Smoke rose in front, and Mayra muttered a curse. Rakers aren't mindless. They'll offer promises to people in power. Destroy this city. We'll save you. Hollow, of course, but a chance is everything. They'll rip our world to shreds one cut at a time. Okay, Ezra said. Say I believe you. How do we stop it? We don't. Bullshit, Thalia snapped. You want to know how we stop it, FBI guy? You hit that thing right there. She pointed between the seats at a large, three-legged, golden reptile monster. Then you get out and put a round between its eyes before it gets away. Then, Ezra said, but his feet found the accelerator and the car surged forward, slipping between two police cruisers bracketing the street. Repeat until we find a way to plug the big guy. Eve would have mocked that idea, would have said humanity wasn't the first to try offing the gardener, but she grabbed the seat back instead. The reptile creature filled the windshield, its big left eye growing wide as the car shot in. That humans would fight wasn't surprising. That they would lose was certain. Fade, bleeding and healing across several gashes along his chest, gawked as the chunky sedan smashed into the third alien Raker he'd fought that morning. After dispatching the legs and orbs creature, the second had found itself victim to a barrage of police gunfire. It had disappeared with holes aplenty to be replaced by several more Rakers. These had come equipped. Future weapons blasting intense sound waves had thrown the cops and their cars away like toys. Two of those Rakers had set off on a random march, shattering windows and breaking bodies of anyone dumb enough to get in their way. The third, this reptile thing with its twitching tongues, stubby arms, and beautiful golden scales, had come for Fade. Its right hand, a four-clawed gripper, held the wide nozzle blaster like it was a T-shirt cannon, ready to dispense inaccurate damage at will. That grip didn't serve the creature well when the car hit, the vehicle mashing its several-meter-high mass into the air and delivering the reptile into the side of an unfortunate bank. Big windows, already bearing cracks from the sound wave assaults, gave no resistance, letting the reptile fly right on through to a tangle of posts, chairs, and immaculate faux marble tile. At least the hour meant nobody save an unlucky janitor or lunatic manager would be inside. Fade, Thalia shouted as he approached the broken wall. You okay? Better now. Thanks for showing up. Sorry it took so long. Also, you're an ass. What's the reason this time? Thalia joined him at the bank's broken wall, the pair looking in as the reptile, two of its legs utterly mashed, struggled to orient itself amid the debris. Abandoning me with Navarro's thugs, I expected more. Thought you had it under control. Fade glanced at Thalia. You have a weapon and all that? I do, a woman wearing FBI gear said, striding past the pair with a gun raised. Thalia gave Fade the details as Mayra laid round after round into the creature's head, then its body. Any second now, Fade expected the creature to dissipate, but the monster settled onto the bank's floor, a pool of greenish-brown blood emerging from its various wounds. Mayra fired until she went empty, and by that time both Eve and Ezra had joined the spectating. How many Rakers? Ezra asked Eve as Fade whistled. Several hundred at least. One less now. Ezra pulled a smoke from his jacket, lit it. This gardener's going to wish it had been a little more patient. The last time Veronica had spent so much time wandering in the dark, she'd slipped away from her parents' Halloween party in the rolling wine country hills and walked among the vines. There, the moon and stars had given her silver guidance. Here, the only interruption to the endless gloom came from glowing stacks. They didn't emit pale light, at least not from a source Veronica could find, but the ground the shambling collections sat upon did. At first, Veronica hadn't noticed, the glow so low as to only be obvious after she'd ventured far enough from the tower. As to where that tower was, Veronica had no idea. Every direction offered darkness broken up by the pale casts. She was very much lost, and she very much didn't care, because her father wasn't here. Whether he ever had been didn't matter now, because Veronica had found a different answer in the dark. See? She'd had a plan. A life of infinite possibilities bordered by the happy guardrails of wealth and privilege. Veronica was supposed to graduate with all the honors, attend the best school in whatever major she deemed interesting, and go off into a life of charity dinners, spectacular parties, and the pursuit of her passions. Magazine covers, accolades, and insurance from any difficulties were the facts of her life. Instead, none of that. A rushed promotion to company figurehead, nepotism style, with no idea what she was doing. Friends became acquaintances, split by a chance gulf too big to bridge. Those guardrails wavered with her father's disappearance and vanished entirely with the grove. Veronica had no life to go back to, no possibility left. At least, not on the old map. The new one wasn't very promising either. She stood over the latest mound, empty cubes stacked at odd angles upon one another. Just the frames, though each one seemed made of a different color metal. Veronica bent down, touched the closest one, whose topaz glint shimmered in the low light. As her finger hit the cold bar, a tiny spark appeared inside the cube. It grew as Veronica watched, expanding into a full, three-dimensional picture within the cube's small borders. The scene detailed a rounded emerald table surrounded by tall, thin, globular creatures. They were frozen. A multitude of flange-like arms extended towards the table's center. Beyond, rigid rectangular windows gave view to a greenish sky and drifting ochre clouds. "What are you?" Veronica whispered. "A real species? Or just a movie?" She stared at the image for a long minute, almost letting herself fall into its world until she straightened. Her finger moved along the cube's bar as Veronica stood and, at its motion, the image flickered to life. The creatures moved and a narrow, squeaky sound emerged. Voices, albeit ones too rapid and high-pitched for Veronica to understand, even if they would have been speaking English, which they definitely were not. Moving her hand back and forth exposed the cube's secrets further, flowing through the meeting and into a soaring view. A boxy city, bounding between blue and yellow valleys. Giant butterflies, or things that looked close enough, winged their way through the sky. At the end of one bar, Veronica shifted her finger to another, and the movie continued, flashing through one strange and wondrous image after another. Fascinating, entrancing, and curious. "A plea," said a warm voice behind her, and Veronica spun, knocking the cube off the stack. It clattered to the stones. "They all give them, before the end." The speaker seemed familiar, and not. A woman with shapely features so perfect Veronica had to fight from backing away. Skin too smooth for her age, but without surgery's telltale sheen. Hair too clean and shiny as it fell across her shoulders, as if placed there by an animator's loving hand. A gray sweater fit well, running onto loose leisure wear. Veronica saw no makeup, but the woman didn't need any. She all but glowed. "Who are you?" Veronica asked, keeping her distance. "They all play different movies," the woman continued. walking near Veronica to pick up the cube and place it, gently, back on the others. It's the full scope of their world. From the drudgery of their work to the miracles of their planet and its life. As compelling a plea as I've ever seen. If Veronica had encountered a person like this on the streets back home, she'd have backed away. Maybe even run. Talking in riddles wasn't something any sane person had time for, but here, in this phantasmal liminal space? You keep saying plea. What do you mean? You're not stupid. I know how you came to be here, and it wasn't by accident. She folded her arms, the sweater seeming to bend at odd angles. Veronica's eye twitched. The man who brought you found what he sought. You, I gather, have not. Truth, lies, what did it matter now? My father. I'm trying to find him. You think he's here? The woman made a show of looking around, peering into the dark. I don't see him. I know he came here. That's as much as I have. The woman nodded, considered, then extended a hand. Call me Daffodil. What do you say we take a look around for your father? And, in the meantime, you tell me a little bit about yourself? Briefings, explanations, endless interrogations. Eve heard Ezra laying out the steps in the bank's battered ruins, while more police, tactical teams, and the first hints of military showed up around them. The Rakers must have realized their surprise had been spent, as no newcomers followed the remaining few as they took hits and teleported away back to the grove. Fresh strikes would pop up elsewhere, the popcorn assault continuing as long as necessary. And they wanted Eve to sit in a chair, telling all this to some suits? No, Eve said simply, as Ezra drew the immediate plans to a close. You can do all that. 4 faces turned towards her, and Eve saw like minds in Fade and Thalia, and Mera, Ezra's partner. Excuse me, all of that? All of what? Ezra asked. Brief the president? I'm sorry, but that's not... You've dealt with attacks before. Terrorists, rogue factions, criminals. This isn't any different, except they'll stand out a lot more. Eve twisted towards the dead golden reptile. There'd be a badge on its body somewhere, a little jewel that could change this whole mess. You don't need us to defend against that. Right. I don't need you in the field. I need you in front of our generals and officials, telling them what to expect. Ezra pointed his cigarette at Eve. You said you've been through one of these. Give us the playbook so we can plan ahead, and then help us map out an offensive. Fade snorted. Nobody's taking the fight to the Grove. Weren't Navarro and Veronica Pline plotting to do just that? Yeah, because they're idiots. At least Navarro. Veronica's just a kid. Ezra countered, and Fade parried back, their verbal banter about the fatal end to any Grove attack giving Eve room to walk away. She stepped over broken glass, around bent poles, and onto otherwise pristine tile. The reptile Raker had big size, and its 3 legs were the width of sturdy tree trunks. The gold scales shimmered. Eve hadn't known this one, and that spared her some sympathy, but the feeling wouldn't last long. Soon, Rakers that she'd known for decades, had bantered with among the Grove's endless courtyard, would start showing up. They would, too, start to die. A cleansing didn't just wipe out the target. The effort tended to reduce the Rakers' roster, too, with the gardener drafting anew from the wreckage. Eve supposed the gardener saw it as a sort of editing, removing those too weak to handle the job. Cruel and efficient. The Raker's weapon, a sonic cannon, was too large for human hands. The gardener offered tools, ready to be sculpted by the audience at a Raker's request. This particular one was new, but there were always fresh inventions. Bundle so many different species, civilizations, and technology levels together, and you always had something to try. More interesting was the reptile's bracelet, snug on its left forearm and bearing amid a looping dark iron, a thumb-sized sapphire. The badge warmed her fingers as Eve took it out, an extraction done with zero grace and much force. She stripped the bracelet off the arm, battered it against the tile until the sapphire popped out. "Ezra's not happy," Fade said, showing up at Eve's side as she lifted the sapphire. "Seems to think we're screwing the world by not going with him." "I expected a threat." Eve looked back at the broken hole. Ezra had his phone out, was speaking, while Thalia and Mera engaged in their own back and forth. "A request made at gunpoint. You convinced him otherwise?" "I told him to think about all the movies where they stuff the heroes in a room rather than let them save the world." Fade threw on a grin. "He swore, but changed his mind." "Popular entertainment saved the day? Or is about to get us killed?" Fade nodded at the sapphire. "You want to go back to the Grove? Lode's dead, you know. They tore him apart." That grin vanished. "I ran, Eve, because they were coming for me next." "We have to try and reason with the gardener, Fade." "We can't fight it. Not for long. Even if we kill every Raker, it will find new ones, or come itself." "The gardener would take us out personally? I'd almost feel honored." "I don't think we'd ever know. It has weapons we can't even comprehend. Ways to erase Earth and everything on it from the universe." "You know this for sure? You ever see one of these planet poppers up close?" Eve gripped the sapphire, laughed low. "I suppose not, but I assume they exist." "The gardener has contingencies for everything." Or, and let me float this here, maybe the gardener's a little overconfident. A little cocky Fade pointed to the dead reptile. "It's been doing its game for a few millennia now. Everything's worked out well enough. Maybe our god's getting lazy. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm saying we get our pal Ezra there to give us a couple of nice toys. Ones that can make a big boom. Then we visit the Grove and have a chat. Only we have something to bargain." "No begging, Eve. It treats us as equals, or it finds out just how dangerous we are." It wasn't pain so much that woke Jaycee, but pressure. 1,000 points across her body, each one a blunt force like a seatbelt pulled too tight. Her eyes opened and saw nothing. A dead black, too black to be a night sky or a cave ceiling without light. So dark Jaycee wondered if she'd died, and this was, somehow, the eternal afterlife. But what afterlife would come with a headache, a dry throat, and a stomach simply ravenous? While her eyes couldn't help much, her ears and nose did a little better. Sounds percolated in the room, familiar ones. The steady whir and rush of mechanical processes, just like Jaycee's laptop would make when ran a few too many apps at once. Clicks near her waist interspersed too, and at an even rhythm, suggesting another automated something. Her nose picked up iron, the sweet metal scent of blood and sterilizing chemicals mingling. She'd visited her dad enough times at the emergency room back home after rough jobs to know those smells. Was it her that had been hurt? How? Jaycee tried to move her arms and legs, an effort that managed a twitch and not much more. The pressure points kept Jaycee still, and she figured she was tied down, a rational thought that spawned a sudden, seizing panic. She wasn't dead, but where the hell was she? What was going on? What were these alien things doing to her? Classic extraterrestrial fears found purchase against the dark. Would probes be put into the wrong places? Would Jaycee be cut apart so her organs could be examined? Her brain thrown into a jar for further experiments? "Stop! Don't spiral!" Jaycee forced herself to breathe, something she'd already been doing without realizing it. Air going in and out of her lungs. Air that didn't taste poisonous, that didn't make her lurch with nausea. Clean, aside from the chemical scent. If the Grove's magical machines didn't last long outside its creamy confines, then Jaycee was, at least, somewhere capable of human survival. She could wiggle her fingers and toes so she wasn't paralyzed, and little by little, evidence of her good condition stacked up. Parts and pieces reported back as functional, from Jaycee's ability to swallow to every muscle she could twitch doing so. Her tongue moved, and her eyes blinked. Nostrils flared and eyebrows rose and fell. The list went on, and every line item pulled Jaycee back from an insane abyss. "I'm okay," Jaycee said, speaking the words into a world she couldn't see. "I'm okay." A hiss, a shunt, a thump, and then another near her head. The darkness ripped away, replaced by a huge, mottled gray and black head, bulbous eyes on either side and two small horns between them. Jaycee focused on those horns, the tattooed gilded designs ringing each. Different from the Raker she'd followed, perhaps like humans had different hair, facial structures, tattoos. Meaning lay there, choices made by this thing and imprinted on its skin. Connections. That's what she'd need to survive this. "What?" "From you," spoke the Zinwi, the gaps not silence but gibberish, unintelligible rumbles, the Grove's translation magic faltering like everything else. "Jaycee," she replied, attempting to point to herself and failing. "My name." The Zinwi only stared back, its huge mouth remaining still. Frowns and smiles. Did they have those things here? Instead, the creature raised a huge hand. Jaycee counted 8 fingers, short and flat, over her head. The Zinwi moved the hand, and Jaycee followed it, drawing a conclusion from 100 bad police videos as to what she should do. The guess came right as the Zinwi rumbled, then spoke again to the side, turning its huge head to Jaycee's left. She tried to follow, but like her arms and legs, Jaycee's skull was cradled tight. "What's going on?" Jaycee tried, saw the Zinwi's left eye, as big as Jaycee's mouth, roll towards her. "What are you doing to me?" The Zinwi rumbled again. A reply came this time from outside the room. The Zinwi's eye focused on Jaycee narrowed. The hand came back, holding the black cover, bringing it towards her face. "Wait, don't do that," Jaycee said. "Not yet." "I won't cause trouble, I promise." "Quiet," came the translation, the Zinwi rumbling as it slid the cover over her eyes. "Time. Again." The pressure rose, her muscles getting tight as every point hit hard. Too much more, and Jaycee felt her eyes would burst, her bones would break. She screamed once. There was no second time.